Welcome back. Today's masterclass is really a spotlight on a project that we recently completed down in Annapolis, Maryland, where we took two condos and we combined them into one. And we'll get into a lot of the reasoning behind that. But certainly the main reason is that they wanted to be able to have the space used in conjunction when the family came and allow to really expand into a larger space so that they could all be together, but also separate so that when the two families were there, they could still have their separate space. And I'd say that was probably the main reasoning behind it. And really to have the extra space for the grandkids, because I know the grandkids came separately, throughout the year, and I know they wanted to be able to have that additional space so they weren't so crammed in the one condo.
Exactly. They started with two adjoining two-bedroom condominiums, and they wanted to create one open, larger four-bedroom. And so we had to figure out how to maintain pathways, focusing through bedrooms and things like that. We turned that into a craft room. So little things that we could do to make sure that the area, the space still flowed nicely. But yes, you could use some of the spaces at some of the time. You could shut it off or still maintain privacy for when guests were in town, or if open it up when it was just the two of them.
Right. Which really gets into a lot of the design and how it functioned as, because I know there was kind of a couple things that really took place early on, which was, I know that they've been thinking about this project for a long time. I know they owned both condos, but the one was a rental.
Mm-hmm.
But I know when they purchased both, I think they said that they had thought about that originally, which was later on they knew that they wanted larger space so that family wouldn't feel like they had to stay in a hotel or someplace close by, that there'd be the room for that. This was really the timing to do it as the grandkids were older.
And they had a lot to consider. So when you have two condominiums, obviously you have duplicates of everything, two kitchens.
Right.
The bathroom count doubled there. And so and as you mentioned, one was in a rental. And so it was in need of new finishes, floorings, and updates. The existing also had some needs to update in that space too. So how do we pull this all together and create this new space as one?
And I know the key behind it was, well, I know that both units, they weren't old units, but they both were about 15 years old, which they were kind of getting to that time frame where with appliances and countertops and things were a little outdated. And I know they really wanted to freshen everything up. But I know also one of their big pushes, as we talked through the design and got into some of the floor plans that you had come up with, was I know they were focused a lot on just opening the space up. And I know that you brought them back in and said, okay, well, let's realize how the space is used sort of now as two separate units. And so that we don't lose that completely, so that when it is closed off, and I know their one family, comes in from quite a distance, so they're bringing luggage and other things with them because they're staying for a while. I know they wanted to be able to have it so that it could, like you said, function as two, but also had the ability to, when it was open, that it did feel like it flowed into the other. So I know that we made sort of a main kitchen area, which was going to be used when it was open, but when it was closed, then they both still had their kitchens and then they would be able to function separately.
Absolutely. So think about it. You have sort of these days, what's really popular is the service kitchen or a back kitchen where you can do cooking and things like that. So that they were able to we captured that space. And so for big family events, holidays, things like that. So you have two ovens, We were able to keep that in
Right.
place, sink and things like that. So sort of the secondary kitchen was coffee bar, overflow of cooking and appliances and things like that. So we were uh, planned for that in that kitchen, but the everyday kitchen in the main unit where they were
Right.
staying and um, spending most of their time, it had a nice kitchen dining room area, and we converted one of the bedrooms as a living room, if you will, but opened it up with a nice double glass door so that they were able to, again, keeping with the flow and open and light coming throughout the space. So we opened that up and then created the larger dining room, because typically in your condominiums, you have
Right.
very a living room, dining room combo that's one room.
Which
So
is really interesting, right? Because I think, one of the things we've found out about doing several of these projects, I mean, we've done them in DC, we've done them pretty much everywhere in this area, is that the real draw about a condo is you have everything, but it's very uh compact, which gives it that sort of that intimate feeling, that you're not in this huge space. So we really had to balance the feel of, so that you didn't lose that feeling of all of a sudden now in this huge space and it just feels out of place. We still wanted it to feel like, oh yes, it's very intimate, but it's also had the ability to expand for having family there or entertaining at the holidays and things like that.
absolutely. I mean, the key was how do they live their lives day to day? Just the two of them. So she was very much into crafts and things like that. So we have the secondary bedroom, and that was we were able to make space with a Murphy bed for guests, and kept that ability to do that. But then we also added the space for craft area and sewing and
Right.
things like that. So it really, they were able to live sort of and expand into the new space, but then when guests came, that could be repurposed and expand even further in through the unit to the again the secondary kitchen, the secondary living room, and the bedroom.
And it really allowed them to, uh, well, have really almost two separate kind of unique units and then also one larger unit that work in conjunction with each other. I know that the laundry room was a big push on one of the things that they wanted to do so that they were able to really accommodate when the kids were there and the extended family. But it also helped them really move into the ability to come back and contract into the smaller area and shut the large doors that we opened.
So many times we see projects where the existing house has a small laundry area, doesn't really have the nice convenience of folding and ironing and hanging some clothes to dry, things like that. As a matter of fact, in these condominiums, they were, of course, stackable, just closets. So there was real no utility space for laundry. So we were able to add in this new space the folding cabinetry, folding top, and again, some hanging that would collapse into the cabinet itself, but it could be when you needed it. It was there, you pulled it out, and it was great for drying, hanging clothes, things like that.
I know one of the things that she was super excited about was when they moved in, they didn't really get to make any of these choices because they actually moved in and it was a new condo at the time. So it was already everything was pre-selected. And so I know one of the things that she was really excited about was when she got to sit down with you and really go through and pick the tile that they wanted and pick the different well, countertops, cabinets, really the whole thing. So it was kind of like their first opportunity to really kind of make it their own, and it was like, you know, we've kind of lived in this place and made do with how it was. But boy, now we can really not just design wise, but also color and textures and things like that. I know the carpeting and the flooring were all, they were all very excited about being able to change those items.
And things that you would think that, like you're saying, they were in there for years, but she had spent a lot of that time planning on how she wanted to see the space, and we worked together to see how we could bring that into reality. Lighting was key for her, and color coordinating and schemes and things like that were very important. And we were able to address all those things. We were able to do sort of a specialty recessed lighting in the ceilings in the condominium. So we had some challenges there, but we were able to still create the layout that she wanted, highlight the accent wall along the one side of the kitchen with the specialty tile and the countertop. Really wanted to expand the kitchen a little bit, and at least and the breakfast counter. So we were able to wrap that around a little bit more and create additional space for the two of them that again could expand to I think finally about 5 people could sit around that countertop.
I know that one of the things that you brought up early on, and I think John thought about it, and as he came back to us, he was like, Barry and I have talked about this, and Craig, I know it wasn't forefront, which was the resale, and I know that you stressed right at the beginning. I know that you want 2 units now, but think about it when this eventually isn't where you're living anymore, or if you just want to sell and move on to something else. And I know that they were really pushing for a much more expansive opening and allowing it to really almost be just completely one. It would be divided more with furniture than it would be with walls. And I know you had them sort of step back and think about it. Okay, well, in 10 years from now, let's say you want to move. Do you want to sell it as 1 unit, or do you think it's more valuable as 2? Which I think is always key is, you may not think right now about how the resale is going to go, but you want to include it in the design. And I know that we stepped back those original designs that they were sort of dictating how things were going, and we showed them how they could get that opening and really make it feel like it's 1 unit, but it could easily be closed back up and made into 2 separate units with really very little effort.
Exactly, and we didn't want just a doorway between the two, because
which is very true. Because then you could go the other way, then it's like, I'm just walking through into another unit.
Yes, this is not like 2 adjoining hotel rooms. I'm dating myself at the old passageway doors between 2 adjoining rooms. I mean, this was a full double door, the opening, if you
and the pocket doors slid back in, and now it just looked like a case opening that was there all the time.
It was a true 6-foot opening between the unit into the new space.
Right.
So, but to touch on what you're talking about, we wanted to make sure that yes, okay, we're pulling an appliance out of this space, but let's leave and make sure that it's still able to go back into that spot in the future, if that's the case. I always ask, what are your long-term goals? Are you thinking, I'm going to be here for 5 years, I'm going to be here for 10 years, or this is for generations, our family's going to be here, those kinds of things. So we take that into account when we're thinking about the design, the selections are very important, and the budget. So we pull all that together to make sure that we're doing the right project.
And I know those 2 stained glass windows that combine as units that allowed the light to come through, but you still had the separation. That was a big part of how it still made it feel open, but not really just seeing through into the other room.
It was something that the family had, and they really wanted to figure a way to incorporate that into the design. And like I said, the light that just came through was fantastic, and it was a great spot for it.
And it kind of made you feel like you were still in that other room, but without really being in that room. And I think that was sort of key with that design. I know that one of the things that I'd say John and Mary both were concerned about, but certainly John brought it up several more times, which was, how do we do this? What is the first step that we take? I don't. I know that he had talked to someone else that was in one of the other buildings that had done it, but they didn't really know the steps. And I know that that's where you sort of made him feel at ease that, yes, not only have we done this many times and worked in many different condos, but also here's what we need to do first. Here's the first steps. Why don't you just run us through quickly what are the steps in that's typically in a condo, not necessarily this specific one.
Well, getting the general floor plan of the existing spaces and then getting that indoor CAD system and creating the floor plans. So they're getting the visualization of how that space is going to start coming together. Then we need to figure out the technical aspects for permitting and engineering, and fire safety is big in condominiums.
And the approval.
And the approval process too.
Which I know we start that almost day one, because we know that every condo unit has different rules and regulations of what can you do and what can't you do.
The review board and that process, we were able to walk that through the entire process, through permitting and through the building approval. And we were able to do that while we were working through the design. So they were extremely happy. And then we were able to work within the building schedule. That's an issue too. When can you do the work?
They were not aware of at all that, that yes, we're gonna have to not just work on the water in this unit, but we're gonna have to turn the water off for the whole unit, which, you have to give, well, in this case, we had to give 2 weeks in advance notice as to which really comes down to a big thing is finding the right contractor, because you really have to have a schedule, because you can't just say, oh, guess what, the plumber's coming, because it's 2 weeks out.
Yeah.
And same with the electric, and same with a lot of the HVAC and things like that, because it is all, that whole section of that unit is all one thing.
As I always say, we're working your home and we're working for you. So we're making sure that you're comfortable as possible. But in this case, we were working for 40 people in the whole building, basically, and had to address their needs and their concerns as far as access and time of day, and like you mentioned, shutting off water. And so there's challenges there, but we handle them, and that's what we have to do, and we know that we have to do it, so we can.
And we know that we need to take into account, I think you mentioned the fire and now that it is one unit, that changes everything there, because now the smoke detectors all need to be interconnected.
Right.
And certainly the sound transmission was a big thing too, with the new flooring that we put down and what we were able to do when we were modifying those bathrooms and things.
Exactly. There's additional things that you have to do to what you think is just a standard flooring with sound attenuation and layers of drywall, things like that. You have to repair the first layer when you've cut a hole in the firewall, and then you've got to repair that, and then you have to do the second layer. So there's some additional work, but it can be done.
And I don't want to sound like a broken record, because I know we talk about this probably on every masterclass, but it just shows why design build is so essential, because it would be so hard, and also the timeline would change drastically if you were going to an architect or a designer, and then having to come back and then say, okay, well, now guess what? I just found out that we can't do this, per the building, okay, well, now we need to go back, and now the contractor's going back and revising his scope of work, and probably costs and all the different things, and this material, this isn't going to work, that was spec'd out by the designer. It really needs to really work together. And I know that when we brought the structural engineer in, to not only, allow us to make that opening, but also showing them that it would work. We're able to put that on the drawings and also really, I don't want to say convince, but convey to the board there, the condo association board, that yes, this was, this wasn't gonna affect the integrity of the building in any way.
That's the thing with design build. We are truly thinking through this project from day one, and that's the biggest advantage. So when in the design bid build path,
Right.
the contractor's getting a set of plans, and that's really just started thinking about it when you've already been thinking about it for months, years, that kind of thing. So we truly said, you know what? We already had in for that, or we've planned for this. And so what better way to continue through a smooth process than the design build process?
And one of the unique situations here is that they traveled a lot. They traveled out of the country a lot and for extended times. And one of the things that made it great that we are design build is that when the message is conveyed of these changes or new thoughts or even just new selections, because I know that we were swimming a lot with them as they traveled and we were trying to get, okay, is this tile going to work? I know we were mailing samples to them and things like that. Ultimately, if it was through an architect or a designer, all that information would have then had to be conveyed back to the builder. And it's so many layers of steps where mistakes can be made, or just that information takes that amount of time where it's really instant with us. Also through builder trend that we use, as those selections are being done, I know that Ashley was typing it in the builder trend, that Dave was able to see it, almost live down at the job site, that, oh, this is changing, or you know what, this is good. And the towers, the tile layers can continue on.
We were also able to work through and provide examples of the tile layout. They added that service to the design agreement, but they then could see, hey, this is how this tile layout is going to look. There were a lot of moving parts to where the niches were going to be laid out, and so we had challenges of what was in the wall here, so that was changing somewhat on the fly. And then we said, you know what, here's the layout that we have, here's how the tile is going to tie in with that layout, and how do you like it? That whole shower area turned out great with the open access that they now had, with just a full panel without the door, but we were able to cut into that glass and, so that you could reach in, turn the water off and on without having being in the shower, which was very convenient for them.
Which they hadn't even really thought of. And I know we couldn't flip it to the other side of the wall so that the door could swing out, which would have worked better in that bathroom. But because the plumbing was where it was, and you are restricted in a condo as to exactly what you can do. This was a single family, we wouldn't have done that. We would have had the door swing the other way, but that really wasn't an option. So then we said, well, wait a minute. Okay, you don't want to have to get into the shower to adjust the water. So cut through the door, cut through the glass. And I know on several jobs we've made it so that it closes up, but on this one, it really wasn't necessary because of the way the shower was.
With the rain shower head, yes.
So basically, it worked out well, and I know that they were excited about, because I know they kind of questioned, Craig, why is this cut out like this? And when you explained it to them so that they could reach in without getting in the shower, they're like, wow, that'll be great, and I know that they wanted the shower. I know we didn't really get into this a whole lot, but I know that, they were thinking sort of long-term, so they wanted things that were more compatible with aging in place. And so that was one of the reasons that we did a number of things that we did throughout the project, which was really for later on.
36-inch doorways minimum in the openings between the units and things like that, and like we said, the double pocket doors.
Right.
It just made it and accessible laundry and the folding area. All was, that was forefront in our mind,
Right.
to make sure that.
The tub to the shower, you know, I mean, obviously we couldn't do, the curb was because it wasn't a condo, but still we did a very small curb so that it was something that could easily be stepped over.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what do you think the biggest challenge was on this particular project? Was it, you know, was it the condo association? Was it the structural integrity? Or what do you, where do you think the, you know, what what kind of caught you by surprise in saying, oh, you know what, this is something that was a little bit different than, you know, one of the many other condo projects we've done?
I would say it was the pulling the uh, like the fire was somewhat challenging, but it wasn't like that day when the electrician was out there. It wasn't a surprise.
Right.
It was just, we knew this was coming, and so how do we do
Incorporate
this?
into the design.
The design, if picture pocket doors, they go into the walls, keeping in mind that even that pocket had to be fire rated or couldn't be break the firewall.
Right.
So we had to do literally a firewall opening, and then we built a pocket door in that opening. It's
Right.
kind of confusing, but that was
Yeah, that was a big, and then not affect the, you know, the integrity of the building too. And
exactly.
be able to flip back easily to make it into two units, so that they could be two units if that's how they wanted to, you know, sell that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree
So-
that that probably was probably one of the,
Even little things like bringing, okay, you know what? Guess what? We have two different cable bills coming to two different units.
Right.
How do we combine this to one? So you've got to pull some utilities, phone lines,
right, all the
that kind of thing. You
wiring.
have to have a central
Yeah.
location, but keep that over there for the future when and if it ever gets split apart again.
Yeah, and I know that some of the things, like I know the codes, you know, are slightly different in the condo, and so I know by us being so diverse in the projects that we do, we're very familiar with what's required in condo versus obviously a single family or, you know, some sort of townhome.
Water pressure, temperature, safeties and things like that, all still had to be in place. For the family and protecting the rest of the condo units and things like that, so it's. There's a lot of units to be concerned about there, but also the main home.
And the beauty is they don't have to be concerned about it at all, because we are.
That's right.
And I think
that's
that
our
was,
job.
yeah, and I think that was one of the things that put their mind at ease, because I think that they were concerned, and I know that the other person that they spoke to, they ended up having to run around and do a lot of the footwork. I know the permit, I know with the condo, they were back and forth, this other couple that they had spoken to. And I know their concern was is that they traveled and they had other things how they
Right.
wanted
Yeah,
to spend their
Have
time.
places to be.
And it wasn't doing this project. They wanted someone to be able to come in, handle the whole thing, and they would come back and they would be able to see the finished product.
We were communicating with the building engineer in this case. That was our responsibility with the county. Permitting, even the inspections, all of that was handled through us.
And I know on this one, we had a relatively tight schedule, because I know that the I guess their daughter was coming in with the grandkids, and they were staying, I think it was for like 2 weeks. So I know that we needed to be finished, and I know we only had a couple days to spare, but you know, we were able to get, you know, the cleaners in and cleaned everything, so that by the time they got back, it was really just situating the new places with you know, the new beds, things like that. And I know that the grandkids came in. I know you received a call from them saying just how excited they were, because I know that the extended family, the husband, wife, and grandkids, they came to stay, and they just, I know that it all worked out the way that it is.
Absolutely.
You know, it was exactly how they had hoped, and it wasn't crammed everybody in there.
And that's great to see where you spend this time working with the homeowners and planning the space and bringing the vision to reality and seeing it work as it was designed is really just great, and that they're happy, they love the space, and how all the finishes came together.
Right.
It's great.
One of the nice things about this particular one, not that we don't do it for all our spotlight projects, but we actually have this one already up on our website. So you can check it out on our website. You can look through the pictures, give Craig a ring and see, you know, if you have any questions about why we did certain things, or if this is something that you're interested in doing, or any project, you know, give us a ring. We're happy to talk to you. And we look forward to hearing from you.
Absolutely, and in this case, it was a condominium, and so that project, we do it, like I said, we've done a number of them,
Yeah.
but is it, we're working in a townhouse community or down in DC, we're always able to work through different projects and work with neighbors, you know, don't let that
Right.
be
Exactly.
an obstacle to your project. We'll figure out some way. We've done it in DC, raising the roof. We've worked with neighbors. So the challenges that you think maybe that come with your project, we'll figure out how to overcome those challenges.
Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you. Have a great day.